The winter wind howled outside the small New Jersey house as Emma Reynolds tucked a fleece blanket around her 3-month-old son, Noah, praying he'd finally drift into a peaceful sleep after yet another sleepless night. At 42, Emma was already stretched thin, newly divorced and drowning in bills, her cheeks hollowed by worry and exhaustion. Once a nurse bustling through 12-hour shifts, she'd been forced to quit when Noah was born with a mild heart defect, leaving them alone in a creaking old house that seemed to whisper reminders of everything she'd lost. She tried to convince herself she was strong enough for both of them, but sometimes, in the silence, the truth clawed at her resolve like a wild animal. And that silence felt deeper tonight, wrapping around the nursery like a shroud, the only sound the ticking of a battered clock on the wall. She rubbed her eyes, fighting tears, and glanced at Noah's tiny chest, rising and falling beneath the pale glow of a nightlight shaped like a moon. The shadows on the walls shifted as if breathing, and she felt an inexplicable unease coiling in her stomach. All at once, she noticed a movement at the bedroom door, sleek and silent like a phantom in the darkness. A stray tabby cat, thin as a twig and soaked from the icy rain, was creeping cautiously into the room, emerald eyes fixed on the crib. Emma's breath caught in her throat as the cat sprang lightly onto the edge of Noah's crib, tail swishing as if it had done this 100 times before. You won't believe where this story is heading. What the cat does next will stir even the coldest hearts, unlocking a chain of events that no one in Emma's quiet neighborhood could ever have imagined, and leaving an entire community in tears. Emma froze, torn between an urge to scream and the primal instinct to protect her child, but the cat moved so gently it was almost mesmerizing. Its paws made no sound as it stepped closer to Noah, who slept on, oblivious to the silent drama unfolding above his tiny form. Moonlight caught the wet fur clinging to the cat's delicate frame, highlighting ribs beneath its thin skin, and for an instant, Emma's fear gave way to a flash of pity. The animal seemed to be trembling, its breath ragged, eyes glimmering with something more than mere hunger or cold. It was as though the cat was searching for something, or someone, and Noah's crib had become the center of its fragile world. Emma's heart slammed against her ribs, imagining claws slashing at her baby's face, but the cat merely sniffed the air, cautious and wide-eyed. She glanced at the hallway behind her, half expecting someone or something to appear and explain why a stray would wander in like this. But the house remained silent, except for the distant wail of the wind, making the room feel suddenly smaller, like a box closing in around her. Emma swallowed hard, realizing she had to act, but every step felt heavy, as though she were wading through water. And still the cat lingered, poised above Noah, as if guarding a secret that only it understood. Outside, the storm seemed to grow fiercer, hurling sleet against the windows, a relentless percussion that rattled the glass panes and sent shivers crawling down Emma's spine. She wanted to reach for her phone, call anyone, but she felt trapped between fear of startling the cat into hurting Noah and the urgent need to remove it. Her mind raced through every possibility: rabies, fleas, some hidden disease that could harm her fragile baby. Yet as she peered closer, the cat's eyes shimmered with a desperate intelligence, as if it were trying to communicate something Emma couldn't yet grasp. It dipped its head toward Noah's tiny chest, sniffing cautiously, then lifted its gaze to Emma with an intensity that seemed almost human. A tear slipped down Emma's cheek, unexpected and hot, because she realized she wasn't just afraid of the cat, she was afraid of the loneliness that had wrapped itself around her since the day her husband walked out. Noah stirred faintly, a tiny sigh escaping his lips, and Emma felt her pulse spike in terror and wonder all at once. She took a careful step forward, whispering a gentle shh into the cold, charged air, but the cat didn't bolt. It simply stayed there, rigid and watchful, as though waiting for the exact right moment. Emma tried to recall if she'd ever seen the cat in the neighborhood before, but her memories blurred under the weight of exhaustion and worry. It seemed impossible that a stray would find its way into her locked house, and even less likely that it would head straight for her baby's crib, as if drawn by an invisible thread. She scanned the room for any open windows or gaps in the old walls, but everything appeared sealed tight against the storm. A sudden gust rattled the shutters, making Emma jump, and the cat hissed softly, though it didn't move from Noah's side. Emma's throat felt dry as dust, her thoughts spinning between fear and a bizarre curiosity about why the cat seemed so invested in her son. She wondered if this was some omen, a sign she'd finally cracked under the pressure of single motherhood and sleepless nights. But the scene unfolding before her eyes felt undeniably real. The soft rise and fall of Noah's chest, the subtle flick of the cat's ears. She reached out a tentative hand, palm up, hoping to coax the animal away from the crib, but the cat merely leaned closer to Noah, as though it sensed something Emma did not. And in that instant, Emma realized that what she feared most wasn't the cat itself, but the possibility that the cat knew something crucial about her son's fragile little heart. A single noise shattered the fragile stillness. A low, eerie rumble deep in the cat's chest. Not quite a growl, but not a purr either, vibrating like a warning from some ancient instinct. Emma's breath hitched as the cat slowly lifted one paw and placed it gently on Noah's chest, pressing ever so slightly, as though testing for a heartbeat. It was a sight so strange and intimate that Emma felt tears welling despite the fear twisting her insides. The cat's eyes glistened, locked onto Noah's tiny body, as though it were measuring every breath, every flutter of life beneath that delicate ribcage. Emma's trembling fingers hovered just inches away, torn between grabbing the animal or letting it finish whatever mysterious mission seemed to drive it. For a fleeting second, Emma imagined the cat as a guardian angel, sent to protect Noah in some inexplicable way. But logic screamed in her head that a stray animal didn't belong near a vulnerable infant, especially one with a heart defect. And yet, despite every warning in her mind, she couldn't force herself to rip the cat away, not when its eyes looked so heartbreakingly determined. The clock ticked louder, the storm howled outside, and Emma realized she was standing on the edge of a decision that might change not only her life, but her son's forever. The cat's paw remained on Noah's chest, unmoving, as if it had chosen this tiny baby for a reason only it could understand. Emma felt her pulse hammering in her temples as she watched the cat's paw rise and fall ever so slightly, with the rhythm of Noah's fragile breathing. Part of her wanted to believe that this creature was simply seeking warmth, but another part felt certain there was something deeper unfolding. The storm's shriek outside seemed to fade beneath the roar of her own thoughts, each one battling the next. Fear, compassion, panic, curiosity. She took another cautious step closer, whispering Noah's name as if her voice alone could shield him from danger. The cat didn't flinch. Instead, it lowered its head again, pressing its nose softly to the baby's chest, as though searching for some hidden signal beneath his tiny ribs. Emma noticed now that the cat's ears twitched in rhythm with Noah's breathing, like it was listening for something only it could hear. A wild idea flashed through her mind. What if the cat sensed a problem with Noah's heart before she could? It seemed insane, but she couldn't ignore the urgency in the animal's posture. Noah let out a tiny hiccup, and the cat immediately shifted its weight, tail lashing in tight, nervous loops. Emma's eyes flooded with tears, realizing she was no longer looking at a simple stray cat, but at something that felt inexplicably connected to her son's fragile life. And she knew she couldn't simply shove it away without understanding what it wanted. She reached trembling fingers toward the cat, intending to lift it off the crib, but the animal flattened its ears and hissed with a sudden ferocity that made Emma jerk back in fear. The sound cut through the soft hush of the nursery like a knife, raising goosebumps along her arms and tightening her chest until she could barely breathe. The cat's eyes, bright as polished glass, flickered between Emma and Noah, as though torn between protecting the baby and fleeing from her outstretched hand. Emma tried again, more gently this time, murmuring soft words of comfort, but the cat remained rigid, muscles coiled beneath its thin, wet fur. A streak of scar tissue glistened along the animal's flank, evidence of past battles that only deepened Emma's sense of pity and unease. She wondered what horrors this creature had endured out there in the freezing streets, and why, of all places, it had chosen this house and this child to infiltrate tonight. Her mind raced with the terrifying possibility of rabies, bacteria, or sharp claws slicing fragile baby skin. Yet despite the danger, something in the cat's unwavering gaze rooted her feet to the floor. Noah shifted in his sleep, a faint wheeze escaping his lips, and the cat let out a low, urgent mewl that cut through Emma like a blade. She was caught between fear and wonder, unsure which one should guide her next move. A single flicker of lightning illuminated the entire room, casting harsh, shifting shadows that made the cat's silhouette loom impossibly large over the crib. For an instant, the creature looked almost supernatural, its back arched and fur standing on end, eyes blazing with eerie green fire. Emma felt her knees weaken, half convinced she was trapped in some waking nightmare born of exhaustion and stress. The storm outside boomed like cannon fire, rattling the window panes so hard Emma thought the glass might shatter inward. She imagined neighbors calling Child Protective Services if they ever found out a stray animal had been perched on top of a sick baby's chest. Her rational brain screamed that she should grab Noah and run, take him to the hospital, do anything except stand frozen like a statue. But another part of her, some primal mother's instinct, kept whispering that this cat wasn't here to harm her child. It was as though the animal was pleading with her to pay attention, to see something she could not yet perceive. Emma clenched her fists, torn between the chaos inside her heart and the reality unfolding inches from her baby's face. She couldn't decide which terrified her more, the possibility of leaving the cat there or the consequences of removing it. And above all, she feared making the wrong choice when Noah's fragile life hung in the balance. Emma's mind raced through the potential fallout of helping the cat or allowing it to stay near Noah any longer. What if Noah got scratched or bitten and his delicate immune system couldn't handle the infection? The stakes felt impossibly high, her maternal instincts screaming in one ear, while compassion for the trembling animal whispered in the other. The cat seemed to sense the silent war within her and shifted closer to Noah, gently pressing its side against the baby's chest, as if offering warmth or comfort. Emma gasped at how delicate the motion was, almost as though the cat was measuring each breath to ensure it stayed steady. She thought of her late husband, how he used to tell her that sometimes angels come in unexpected shapes, and for a fleeting second, she wondered if this animal could truly be some kind of guardian. But then reality crashed back, reminding her of bills to pay, doctor's warnings, and a baby whose tiny heart could fail without warning. She bit her lip until she tasted blood, trying to silence the trembling in her hands. Outside, the wind shrieked, carrying a distant sound like a baby crying, though Emma couldn't tell if it was real or just her fraying nerves. And in that haunting silence, she realized that every second of indecision might be a second too late for Noah. Then, as if driven by an invisible force, Emma made a decision that would alter the course of both her and the cat's lives forever. She inhaled shakily, stepped closer to the crib, and scooped the cat into her arms despite its squirming protest. She braced herself for claws, but the cat stilled the instant Emma pressed it against her chest, letting out a soft, vibrating meow that sounded almost like relief. Emma's breath came in ragged gasps as she backed away from the crib and lowered the cat to the floor, determined to protect Noah, but unwilling to simply cast the creature back into the freezing storm outside. She stared down at the cat, who sat now with its eyes fixed on the crib, tail flicking with restless urgency, as though trying to communicate that its job wasn't finished. Emma's gaze darted to Noah, who suddenly let out a sharp, wheezing gasp that made Emma's entire body go cold with terror. The cat immediately yowled, a high, piercing cry filled with such desperation that it sent a chill through Emma's bones. She knew at that moment she couldn't ignore the animal any longer. With trembling fingers, she reached for her phone to dial 911, realizing the cat might have just saved her baby's life. Emma's fingers trembled so hard, she almost dropped her phone as she punched in the numbers for 911, her breath coming in short, panicked bursts. The cat stayed pressed against her leg, mewling insistently, as if urging her to hurry, its thin body quivering with tension. When the dispatcher's voice crackled through the line, Emma could barely choke out the words, explaining in broken sentences about her baby, the cat, and the sudden gasp Noah had let out. The dispatcher spoke with practiced calm, asking her to check Noah's breathing and count the seconds between each wheeze. But Emma's vision swam with tears, making the baby's tiny chest blur in and out of focus. The cat let out another piercing cry, darting forward to the crib and placing its paws on the railing, staring down at Noah as though it knew precisely what was happening inside his fragile body. Emma stumbled closer, phone clutched in one hand, the dispatcher's voice echoing in her ear like a distant bell as she watched Noah's color shifting subtly toward a dusky blue. Terror seized her chest so violently she felt like she might collapse, but the cat's steady, vigilant posture kept her rooted to the spot. In that terrifying moment, Emma realized the animal had sensed this crisis before any human could have. And somehow, that knowledge gave her the strength to keep moving, even as her world tilted on its axis. Within minutes, flashing red and white lights painted the icy street outside as paramedics thundered into the house, carrying bulky gear and barking rapid instructions that made Emma's head spin. One of the medics, a woman named Carla, gently scooped Noah from the crib and laid him on a collapsible gurney, her fingers probing his tiny chest as monitors beeped urgently. Emma hovered close, barely daring to breathe, while the cat crouched beside her feet, hissing softly whenever anyone came too close. Carla glanced down, startled by the cat's fierce presence, and asked in a tense voice whether the animal had scratched Noah. Emma shook her head frantically, explaining that the cat had seemed to know something was wrong before anyone else did. Another paramedic exchanged a skeptical look with Carla, but focused quickly on stabilizing Noah's oxygen levels. Emma's eyes darted between the cat and her baby, unable to process how utterly surreal the scene had become. Outside, snow fell in thick, swirling sheets, muffling the sounds of chaos inside the small house. Neighbors peered through curtains, their breath fogging the glass as they watched the drama unfold. And above the din, the cat's low, urgent mewl pulsed like a warning bell no one else seemed able to hear. At the hospital, Emma clutched the cat's carrier on her lap in the back of the ambulance, refusing to leave the animal behind despite the paramedics' protests. The cat sat rigid inside the plastic shell, eyes blazing as the siren wailed through the icy streets, matching the frantic rhythm of Emma's heart. In the ER, doctors whisked Noah away, leaving Emma stranded under harsh fluorescent lights, her face streaked with tears and her clothes soaked from melting snow. Nurses tried gently to separate Emma from the carrier, suggesting the cat might be a health hazard in a sterile environment. But Emma refused to let go, her grip ironclad. Finally, a young doctor named Dr. Patel approached, calm and soft-spoken, listening as Emma recounted how the cat had alerted her to Noah's sudden distress. To Emma's shock, Dr. Patel didn't dismiss her story as hysteria. Instead, he knelt beside her chair, glancing at the cat with cautious curiosity, and said he'd seen stranger things in medicine, including animals sensing seizures or cardiac issues before any monitor could. Emma felt an unexpected surge of relief, like a weight lifting off her chest. For the first time all night, she dared to believe she hadn't simply imagined it all. And though Noah remained hidden behind swinging ER doors, Emma found a tiny thread of hope clinging to the cat's vigilant gaze. As dawn broke over the hospital parking lot, news of Emma's incredible night began to ripple through the corridors, carried by whispering nurses and wide-eyed orderlies. Some dismissed the tale as a mother's exhaustion-fueled hallucination, but others swapped stories of dogs who'd detected cancer or cats who'd saved owners from house fires. Emma sat numbly by Noah's hospital crib, watching machines record the delicate dance of his heartbeats, each blip a precious lifeline she clung to with every fiber of her being. The cat lay curled on a folded towel beside Noah's bed, allowed to stay only because Dr. Patel insisted it might help keep the baby calm. Several staff members gathered cautiously at the door, peering in with fascination at the sight of the animal standing sentry beside an infant patient. Emma felt the tension in her chest loosen slightly as Dr. Patel confirmed that Noah's sudden gasping fit had signaled a minor cardiac arrhythmia, not immediately life-threatening, but dangerous if ignored. Emma realized with a shudder that without the cat's bizarre intervention, she might never have noticed in time. The nurses began calling the cat Miracle, passing along the nickname like a sacred secret. And though Emma was still raw with fear and exhaustion, gratitude radiated through her like a fragile sunrise. The turning point arrived when Dr. Patel returned, his expression cautious but carrying a hint of a smile, to tell Emma that Noah was stable enough to be moved out of critical care. Emma sobbed with relief as he explained that they'd caught the arrhythmia early enough to adjust Noah's treatment plan, reducing the risk of future episodes. And while no one could say for certain whether the cat truly sensed the problem, Dr. Patel praised Emma's quick action and quietly thanked the animal for prompting it. Emma watched the cat stretch and leap lightly onto the side of Noah's crib, pressing its small head against the baby's tiny hand. For the first time in weeks, Noah opened his eyes and gurgled a soft, happy sound, his cheeks flushing pink as though infused with new life. Emma's tears flowed freely as she whispered words of gratitude to the cat, feeling an overwhelming surge of love for this unlikely savior. Even the skeptical paramedic, Carla, stopped by the room to peek in, offering a sheepish smile and gently scratching the cat behind its ears. Emma realized she was witnessing the birth of a story that would ripple far beyond her own family, a story of an animal's mysterious gift and the fierce, unwavering love between a mother and her child. And in that moment, Emma knew her life would never be the same. 2 weeks later, the icy winds of January had softened into a brittle, pale sunshine that poured through Emma's living room windows, casting warm light over a very different scene than that stormy night. Noah lay cooing on a colorful blanket spread across the floor, his little fists opening and closing as though grasping at invisible stars, while the cat, now officially named Miracle, watched him with regal solemnity from the arm of the couch. Emma moved quietly around them, folding laundry and humming under her breath, her face no longer drawn tight with fear, but glowing with the fragile relief of a mother who has survived her worst nightmare. The house still creaked in the wind, but it felt less like an echo of loneliness and more like an old friend sighing in contentment. Emma found herself smiling at the smallest things. The soft burble of Noah's laughter, the rhythmic thump of Miracle's tail against the cushions. It was as if the cat had breathed new life into the walls themselves, chasing away shadows that had lingered far too long. Friends and neighbors dropped by daily, bringing meals, baby clothes, and gifts for Miracle, each visitor eager to see the cat who had become a local legend. Emma welcomed them all, though she still carried a private knowledge in her heart, a certainty that Miracle wasn't just a stray but a silent guardian who'd chosen them for reasons she might never fully understand. And though finances remained tight and life continued to throw its daily challenges her way, Emma faced each morning with newfound courage she hadn't felt in years. Small, tender rituals began to define Emma's new routine, moments that stitched together the bond between woman, child, and cat like threads in a precious tapestry. Every morning, Miracle padded into Noah's nursery ahead of Emma, jumping onto the crib's edge and peering inside with sharp, watchful eyes before Emma lifted her son into her arms. Doctors at the hospital encouraged Emma to keep an eye on Noah's condition, but they were cautiously optimistic, crediting early intervention for saving his tiny heart. At home, Emma found herself studying Miracle's movements almost obsessively, as if trying to decode some secret language hidden in every flick of the cat's ears or tilt of its whiskers. Sometimes she'd catch Miracle staring at Noah with such fierce intensity that it stole her breath, leaving her convinced the cat was still guarding him from invisible dangers. In the quiet hours after midnight, when the house lay wrapped in shadows and Noah slept peacefully, Emma would stroke Miracle's silky fur and whisper words of gratitude she could barely put into sentences. She felt like her world, once cracked and splintered, had been gently glued back together by a pair of emerald eyes and velvet paws, and though she still awoke some mornings gripped by fleeting echoes of terror, the sight of Miracle curled protectively beside Noah reminded her that hope could come in the most unlikely forms. Each day, Emma discovered small joys she hadn't known she'd been missing, like the way Noah giggled when Miracle's tail brushed his cheek, or how the cat seemed to purr a little louder whenever Emma smiled. Word of Miracle's extraordinary actions continued to ripple outward, transforming a private family crisis into a story that captivated an entire community. Local news stations aired Emma's tale, complete with footage of Miracle perched beside Noah's crib, his striped tail swishing like a royal banner. Reporters appeared at Emma's doorstep, microphones in hand, eager to capture the Miracle cat who'd become an overnight sensation. Though Emma felt awkward under the bright camera lights, she spoke bravely, determined that people should know how this small creature had saved her son. Animal shelters called to say Miracle's story was inspiring more people to adopt strays, especially older or injured cats who might otherwise be overlooked. Dr. Patel appeared in several interviews, lending medical credibility to the idea that animals sometimes sense subtle shifts in human health long before machines can detect them. Even Carla, the once skeptical paramedic, filmed a short segment for the local news, speaking with tears in her eyes about how the cat might have saved Noah's life. Neighbors who had once kept their distance now approached Emma with casseroles, warm hugs, and words of admiration, And through it all, Emma felt the invisible weight of isolation slowly lifting, replaced by a sense of belonging she hadn't known she'd been craving. For the first time since her husband left, she felt like part of a community again. Emma began to dream bigger than she had in years, driven by the belief that Miracle's story could help others facing loneliness, fear, or medical uncertainty. She launched a small social media page called Miracle's Watch, dedicated to sharing stories of animals who'd intervened in human health crises, hoping to shine light on how deeply animals could impact human lives. Messages flooded in from around the country. A dog in Texas who'd alerted its owner to low blood sugar, a parrot in Florida who squawked until rescuers found its elderly owner collapsed on the floor. Each story fed Emma's resolve, giving her a purpose she hadn't felt since leaving her nursing career. She began collaborating with local shelters to raise awareness for adopting strays, emphasizing how creatures like Miracle often carried gifts waiting to be discovered. On weekends, she took Noah and Miracle to community events, where the cat basked in gentle pats and coos from adoring children and seniors alike. Emma marveled at how far they'd come from that freezing night when she'd nearly lost everything. Even the hospital invited her to speak at a fundraiser, where she stood trembling at a podium and told hundreds of strangers how a little cat had saved her son, and in many ways, saved her too. And while life was still hard, Emma felt an unshakable faith that as long as they were together, she and Noah could face whatever came next. Late one evening, as Emma rocked Noah in her arms while Miracle purred softly beside them, she reflected on how quickly life had shifted from terror to hope. The baby's chest rose and fell with an easy rhythm, no trace of the earlier struggle that had nearly stolen him away. Miracle gazed up at Emma, eyes luminous in the lamplight, and Emma felt certain she was looking into the eyes of a creature who held secrets older than words. She thought about how she'd once stood, paralyzed by fear, in this very room, convinced she couldn't survive another heartbreak. Now the same walls echoed with Noah's giggles and the soft thump of Miracle leaping onto windowsills, chasing stray beams of moonlight. Sometimes Emma still woke from nightmares, haunted by the sight of Noah gasping for breath. But each time Miracle was there, curled protectively beside the crib. Emma found comfort in small, ordinary miracles, the way the cat nuzzled Noah's cheek, the gentle weight of a furry body draped across her lap, the tender rhythm of a child's breathing. In these moments, Emma no longer felt alone in the world, and as she pressed a kiss to Noah's soft hair, she realized the night that had nearly broken her had also given her back everything she thought she'd lost. Because in saving her son, Miracle had reminded her that love, pure, fierce, and unexpected, could appear even in the darkest storm. He didn't just save a baby, he saved a mother's hope, and he turned a silent house into a home filled with laughter, reminding everyone that sometimes the smallest creatures carry the greatest miracles.